Okay, thank you everyone for being here today. Today I'm going to talk about my PhD dissertation, which is about the relationship between social cohesion and community rebounding in Puerto Rico after environmental disasters. And we're going to specifically see if social cohesion accelerate the community rebounding in Puerto Rico. I'm a ABD PhD candidate at Clemson University. And I have my master's in urban design and my bachelor's in architecture. I have some interdisciplinary teaching experience at Clemson University and professional practitioner experience as urban designer and planner back in Iran. So my research is mostly revolves around community resilience, disaster recovery, placemaking, and social cohesion. And today, as I said, I'm going to talk about my dissertation. Okay, let's get started. I appreciate any comments and thoughts on my research. Okay, the hurricane took apart my house, took off the walls, the roof, the ceiling, the city I was attached to, everything, said Alberto. Alberto is only one example of millions of people around the world that each year are impacted by disasters, let alone the number of people, the number of death toll, A lot of people are impacted and being forced to relocate to different areas after a disaster without knowing when they can go back to their normal life. So that makes them feel and experience a lot of anxiety and anxiety due to not knowing when they can go back to their house. The expectation after those disasters is the recovery as strongly as it can be and as fast as it can be. The recovery process includes 4 sequential and overlapping phases. The phase 1 is emergency response, which is kind of like getting back the essentials, sheltering, rescuing people. And after that, we have restoration, which is restoring the utilities, housing. It's like having the major urban services up and running. The next phase is basic reconstruction, which is rebuilding the housings, the roads to the pre-disaster level in terms of a structure. And the 4th phase is major construction, which is mostly contains even bouncing forward and make those make changes for the better in the communities. These phases can overlap, and like from emergency to the major construction is from a short term to long term, and it's not the same for different communities. Different communities experience these disaster recovery levels differently, and the time of each level is different based on their vulnerabilities. A major intensifier of the risk and a disaster is the vulnerability of the involved communities. Some people are politically more vulnerable, some people are economically vulnerable, and some people are socially more vulnerable. Any form of these vulnerabilities can reduce the ability of communities to predict, respond, resist, and recover from a disaster. Resilience, as you might be familiar with the concept, is the capability of a system to help the communities to get better, because if we have the same, if we try to rebuild in the disaster recovery phase to the pre-disaster status, we're going to put the communities in the same vulnerability to future disasters. So it's important always to bounce forward and make make communities more resilient and more prepared in terms of possible future disasters. One of the important angle of resilience is social resilience. Social resilience is the capacity of social groups and communities to recover from and respond positively to crisis. It is the ability of people, groups, and activities to coordinate effectively in a time of disaster. As you can see on the right side, one of the determinant factors of social resilience is social cohesion. Social cohesion is the glue that bonds people to one another in families, groups, organizations, and communities. It's about creating common values among members of a community and enabling them to sense that they are member of a same community with the same challenges and same problems. So this research aim to understand if a disaster happens, we want to compare to see if communities, as you can see down here, with a stronger social cohesion are in better shape after 2-3 days after a disaster compared to communities with weaker social cohesion. So based on the literature review, the theoretical framework for this study was that when an event or a shock happens, pre-disaster status of the community is important, which is determined based on the demographic features, funding and accessibility to resources, geographic features, and social cohesion. This affects the recovery rate, and if a successful recovery rate happens, communities get more resilient, and that affects the pre-disaster status. And it is when the status is like the community is more prepared for future disasters. So in this research, we're going to control all other factors, and we're going to see if social cohesion affects the recovery rate. We're going to the social cohesion based on the literature includes the variables such as social capital, distribution of opportunity, sense of community, social participation, and place attachment. And recovery rate includes variables like post-disaster population, functioning organization, redevelopments, and available resources. So the main question is, what is the difference in the pace of rebounding from environmental disasters between communities with a stronger social cohesion compared to those with weaker levels of social cohesion? The case study for this research is Puerto Rico, which was struck by Hurricane Maria in 2017 and again by Hurricane Fiona last year. Hurricane Maria caused in 94.4 billion in damages, 3.4 million people were affected, and even years after, some areas experienced continuous pain and little progress in the recovery process. Over 200,000 Puerto Ricans left their homes, and 4% of the population have not returned to their lands, which has caused several issues like decreasing demand for housing and more vacant units, lower growth rate in the younger population, school closure throughout the island, and lower level of income. In Puerto Rico, those social vulnerabilities that I mentioned have exacerbated the impacts of those natural disasters. In addition to that, continued structural dependency in colonial relationship between Puerto Rico and the United States has made the recovery and coordination of the aid problematic. And the aid after Hurricane Maria was approved later than it was supposed to compared to other mainland areas in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. So as I said, these are the variables of the study. We want to see the effects of social cohesion on community rebounding, and some extraneous variables are controlled. 4 communities are selected for this case study: 2 communities with similar distance from the shore, similar ethnicity and race distribution, different median income levels, and 2 other communities with similar distance from the shore, different ethnicity, and similar median income level. The case studies for this research, after consulting with experts, we decided to go with 2 municipalities, Municipality of Añasco and Municipality of Peñuelas. And on those 2 municipalities, after doing GIS analysis based on the criteria such as race and ethnicity disparity, the median income level, distance from a shore, and distance from a city, we reached to 4 communities, community of Sidra, Corcovado, Rocio, and Santo Domingo. So 3 sub-questions for this study are raised. We want to see if places with a stronger social cohesion rebound quicker. We want to see what factors make them recover faster, and we want to see how we can reinforce social cohesion pre-disaster to make communities resilient to future shocks. This research is a sequential mixed method. First, the measures deductively resulted from the literature review. The survey was done with a questionnaire that was measuring all those variables and indicators. And then we analyzed the survey, and then we had a multiple case study, like more qualitative part, and we saw which factors were more important and how we can reinforce those factors. So as I said, the first phase was a survey. I distributed questionnaires among the households of those 4 communities. Households were randomly selected, and 132 questionnaires were received from those communities. And the goal was answering and seeing if social cohesion make communities rebound quicker. And the method of analysis for this step was principal component, multivariable linear regression on jump statistical software. And this is the sample size, and this is how I measured social cohesion and recovery rate. As you can see, social cohesion is measured based on those 5 indicators, and the recovery rate is also measured based on those 4 indicators that I mentioned with JUMP software. First, I coded the questions, created the scores for each factor, and refined those scores based on their importance on the literature review, and I visualized the overall trend and estimated the overall relationship. The second step was that qualitative part, which meant to answer the second and the third question to understand what factors are important and how we can reinforce social cohesion. 40 in-person interviews with randomly selected stakeholders in those 4 communities were conducted, and the method of analysis was qualitative inductive coding. 40 in-person interviews were after Maria and before Fiona. I forgot to put that in here, but 19 more interviews were after Hurricane Fiona. So the results showed, first here we can see the comparison between the level of social cohesion between those 4 communities. As you can see here, community of Sidra has the lowest level of social cohesion, and Corcovado has the highest level of social cohesion, and Santo Domingo and Rocio have the same social cohesion level. And as you can see here, the analysis of variance showed that communities are significantly different in terms of social cohesion. The analysis of variance for the recovery rate showed that the communities are not significantly different in terms of the recovery rate. As you can see here, they're not significantly different. However, community of Sidra is still slightly, has a slightly lower recovery rate. So to understand the relationship between social cohesion and recovery rate, you can see that the results show that there is a correlation between social cohesion and recovery rate, and based on using lack of feed on jump software, we can see that the polynomial relationship, polynomial fit degree 2 fits this relationship the best. As you can see here, all communities as social cohesion increases, the recovery rate increases. However, it's only to some extent. After some point, as you can see here, as social cohesion increases, the recovery rate does not change. The combined relationship is here for all 4 communities. So as you can see here, it's like a disaster happens and the immediate social cohesion affect that recovery rate. And I'm gonna, as a community member, help you as another community member that is being affected. I help you and we help each other to recover faster. But we can help each other to some extent to recover. After that, no matter how much I help you, it's like still I'm willing to help you and still social cohesion is increasing, but the recovery rate and how much you recover doesn't change. So the results showed that the communities were significantly different in terms of social capital, social participation, and redevelopments. Before even starting to talk about the discussion, that was the result of the first step and the statistical part. And I want to draw your attention to some of the quotes from the residents for the interview parts. So the residents said, we had no food, electricity, nothing, at least we had each other. Another person said, the community managers did everything from cleaning the debris from my yard to repairing my roof. They gathered everyone together to help us. Another person, which was the president of Corcovado, said, I love helping people and working with the community. The previous generation did the same community service for my community members. Now it is my turn. I hope this also motivates the new generation to help others in the future. Another person said, we are ready. We are used to these environmental disruptions. We know they're coming, but the infrastructure is not ready. Another person said, we have no other choice but to help each other because the government gives money, but it does not reach us. The second round of interview, which was after Maria and after Fiona, some of the quotes were, municipalities were way more efficient with helping communities in need. So micro-government reaction to help was way more efficient. Another person said people were more organized in creating groups for helping out people. And another person said the government was more organized and faster in distribution of the resources and financial aid reached us faster. Another person said, we understood that we need to organize ourselves better by creating a community association to empower ourselves. And another person said, after Maria, the resources were centered in San Juan, but after Fiona, they were mostly distributed everywhere and community leaders were more responsible. So based on the results of the survey and the interviews, there are some factors that are involved in community rebounding. Some of the most important ones are social network, infrastructure like water system, solar system, and communication services. Engagement in community activity is important. Local leadership is important. Local organization and distribution of the funds are important. There are different factors that are involved in community rebounding apart from social cohesion. So how can we help Alberto? As you can, if you remember, this was the trend from the statistical analysis and step 1. As you can see here, as social cohesion increases, the recovery rate increases to some extent. And after that, it's like no matter how much social cohesion increases, it doesn't change the recovery rate. So it seems like at the beginning, when a disaster happens, immediately after a disaster, those internal factors are important that are mostly involved in social cohesion, like engagement in community activities, social network, human capital, like people with different skills help one another, sense of belonging to the community, local leadership, local organization in the distribution of the funds, self-sufficiency in food, community organization in the emergency time, active local organization in both emergency and non-emergency times, social activities, safety, and volunteering. However, if we want to have that trend going up, there are some external factors involved that are important in recovery rate. They're like social participation in the planning process for the next hurricane season, available resources and fund accessibility, distribution of the fund, infrastructure, empowering and educating communities, natural resources, multi-usage public buildings, medical resources, sustainable new development, and education. So, based on the results, the revised framework is like, still when an event happens, the community status matters. This community status includes the internal social cohesion factors like social networks, your friends and families, local leadership, like active leadership, pre and post disaster, and distribution of the funds, and organizing the community volunteers in emergency time. Human capital, like individuals with different skills and their willingness to volunteer in a emergency and non-emergency times to help one another to make that social cohesion stronger, and also community engagement. The external factors affects these community status as well, like social participation in the planning process for disaster mitigation and empowering and educating communities. Also available resources like economic resources, natural resources, infrastructure, public places, and medical resources. These external factors, as I said, affects the community status. Then the recovery, that determines the recovery rate. If a successful recovery rate happens, communities get more resilience. This resiliency affects the community status. And for possible future disasters, then these external factors that has made communities stronger, they're going to be more and more independent of those over time. So some of the study contribution, it recognized the effects of endogenous and exogenous factors in disaster recovery. It helped communities better respond to slow onset and rapid onset environmental changes, emphasized the role of pre-disaster social cohesion on households' recovery pace, highlighted the effectiveness of local organization with bottom-up community actions, showed the best use of funding and the best way to disperse funds pre and post disasters, revealed the ways that communities in Puerto Rico can reinforce social cohesion, and show how we can empower communities pre-disaster and make them more independent from government institutions. Some questions arose after this research. Two of them were, what is the role of community engagement and local institutions specifically in disaster recovery? And how are communities with better or worse access to resources respond to environmental disasters differently, like accessibility to those external factors? So thank you so much for listening to my research. I would appreciate any question or comment.